Hey guys, Michael J. Crawford here, and welcome to day 8 of our 40-day fast. Today we're going to be reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 16 through 71. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. Darkness had already set in, but Jesus had not yet come to them. Then a high wind arose, and the sea began to churn. After they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea. He was coming near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him on board, and at once the boat was at the shore where they were heading. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the other side of the sea knew that there had only been one boat. They also knew that Jesus had not boarded the boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone off alone. Some boats from Tiberias came near the place where they ate the bread after the Lord gave thanks. When the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum looking for Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus answered, "I assure you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs, but because you ate the loaves and were filled. Don't work for the food that perishes, but for the food that lasts for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal of approval on him." "What can we do to perform the works of God?" they asked. Jesus replied, "This is the work of God, that you believe in the one he has sent." "What sign are you going to do so that we may see and believe you?" they asked. "What are you going to perform? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, just as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Jesus said to them, "I assure you, Moses didn't give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the real bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the one who comes down from the heavens and gives life to the world." Then they said, "Sir, give us this bread always." "I am the bread of life," Jesus told them. "No one who comes to me will ever be hungry, and no one who believes in me will ever be thirsty again. But as I told you, you've seen me, and yet you do not believe. Everyone the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will never cast out. For I have come down from heaven, not to do my will, but the will of him who sent me. This is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose none of those he has given me, but should raise them up on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day." Therefore the Jews started complaining about him because he said, "I am the bread that came down from heaven." They were saying, "Isn't this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, 'I have come down from heaven'?" Jesus answered them, "Stop complaining among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by God. Everyone who has listened to and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. I assure you, anyone who believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that anyone may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. The bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." At that, the Jews argued amongst themselves, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" So Jesus said to them, "I assure you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you do not have life in yourselves. Anyone who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. Because My flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. The one who eats my flesh and drinks my blood lives in me, and I in him, just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father. The one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. It is not like the manna your fathers ate and they died. The one who eats this bread will live forever. He said these things while teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. Therefore, when many of his disciples heard this, they said, "This teaching is hard. Who can accept it?" Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were complaining about this, asked them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to observe the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? The Spirit is the one who gives life. The flesh doesn't help at all. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and are life. But there are some among you who don't believe." For Jesus knew from the beginning those who would not believe and the one who would betray him. He said, "This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted to him by the Father." From that moment, many of his disciples turned back and no longer accompanied him. Therefore, Jesus said to the 12, "You don't want to go away too, do you?" Simon Peter answered, "Lord, who will we go to? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." Jesus replied to him, "Didn't I choose you, the 12? Yet one of you is the devil." He was referring to Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, one of the 12, because he was going to betray him. What is it that you need? Really need? There are probably a big gap between our answers today and those of the crowd that Jesus fed. An iPhone, didn't have it. Wi-Fi, didn't have it. Air conditioning, a car, regular access to a nearby grocery store with 5 kinds of Cheerios. You get the point. But maybe now you're thinking, food. We all need food to eat. Let's see what Jesus had to say about that. Jesus uses the feeding of the 5,000 to point to a deeper truth. He is the true bread that satisfies not just physical hunger, but the spiritual hunger of our souls. Jesus explains that just as bread nourishes the body, he alone can nourish and sustain our spirits. He invites us to come to him, basically declaring, "Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." His audience, however, struggles to understand this deeper meaning, just as the Samaritan woman struggled to comprehend Jesus' teaching about living water in John 4. To the Samaritan woman, Jesus offered living water, which would quench her spiritual thirst forever, just as he uses bread to explain spiritual nourishment in John 6. He used water as a metaphor for eternal life to the Samaritan woman. But metaphors, bread and water, reveal the same truth. Jesus is the only source of true satisfaction. Physical needs like hunger and thirst are temporary, but the spiritual needs of our soul are eternal. Jesus meets those needs perfectly. Both stories also highlight the importance of belief. When Jesus told the Samaritan woman about the living water, she believed and shared the good news with her village. In John 6, however, many who heard Jesus' teachings about being the bread of life found it difficult to accept. Some turned away, unable to understand or believe. In both cases, Jesus invites us to trust in him for sustenance that lasts forever. He is the bread that fills our deepest hunger and the water that quenches our deepest thirst. In him we find eternal life and satisfaction that the world cannot offer. In him we find what we truly need. Begin praying today with Psalm 107, verse 9. For he has satisfied the thirsty and filled the hungry with good things.